Welcome back, Novello Nation, to another episode of the Aaron Novello podcast. I have with us the pride and joy of Chicago, $115 million a year producer, Mr. Leigh Marcus. Appreciate you being here with us, Leigh.
Always great to see you, Aaron. Great to talk to you.
Always a pleasure, brother. And I appreciate you taking the time. I really do my best to hand select people to be on this platform that I feel can really add value to those that are listening. And I know that people are going to definitely get value from our time together. So, when I think about you, Leigh, I think about a few things. One of them is just a world-class, Olympic level, gold medal salesperson. And, I'm aware that you're a workhorse, right? I mean, you're just kind of doing particular activities on a regular basis. Consistency and discipline are words that I think about when I think about you. And I was thinking about this in preparation for us connecting, that I think a lot of agents, particularly newer agents, have a hard time in this business because they don't recognize what business it actually is, which is a sales business. And you had kind of this very distinct, in my opinion, competitive advantage of being involved in a real sales job, a corporate level sales job, prior to getting into real estate. So if you could just kind of briefly share with the audience what that experience was like for you and what you learned and how that actually helped you in being able to, make a very smooth and profitable transition into selling real estate.
Sure. So, great question, Aaron. So my first job actually out of college was in technical support for IBM, right? So I had a headset on for 8 hours a day, troubleshooting people's problems with their computers and everything. And so IBM tracks all of your results, right? They track how many calls you were on, how long you were talking, all that stuff. And so right from the get-go, I think I had developed the habit of just having a headset on for, a full day's work and, pretty much talking to people all day long. So that was my first job. And then when I moved into sales with them and then with another technology company, I just continued that where they track, all these big companies, they track and each day would send out the results. So we'd all be on a team and they would send out who had the most number of dials that day, talk time that day, sales, all of that. And so, you're competing with everybody on your team every single day. And so, you develop that. So like I looked at what the minimum standards were, and they came up with the minimum standards that you had to have 4 hours of talk time. That's like not just 4 hours sitting there. That's actual talking. They don't it's not just dialing. It's actually talking physically on the phone, right? So 4 hours, not of actual talk time, and 80 contacts a day. Okay. Wow. And so when I took that as the minimum standard, what I did was I said, okay, well, if that's, you think about what the average person at the company made based on 4 hour money-wise, 4 hours a day, and 80 dials or 80 contacts. Well, what if I did 6 hours a day and 120 contacts? So I kind of made that my minimum standard, right? So you just kind of leveled up, went 150% above what anyone else was doing. And then, that really, you don't just get 50% better results. See, that's the whole thing about this business is if you do 50% more, you get 10 times the results. Right. It's not linear like that. It's exponential. The results are. And so very quickly I became, one of the top salespeople at the company. And then you get more, you get new accounts, you get more. And so you just keep, you keep growing like that. And so similar to in real estate. So I just leveled up what my minimum standards were versus the company's.
It's so interesting, man. So I wrote down, I was feverishly writing down stuff as you were talking. So in that corporate sales environment, you noticed a few things. One is that they track everything that you did, right? They track phone calls, they track talk time. And, you were getting those kind of direct feedback of those results every single day. And you recognize that as a salesperson, like that was your kind of exposure to sales, this is what you do in sales, right? You have to be on the phone. The minimum standard at a corporate level is 4 hours a day, 80 contacts. And not only that, they're monitoring to the minute, right? Like what you're doing and how you're doing it. And you recognize okay, this is a formula. And if I just simply, perhaps tweak the formula and I spend more time on the phone and increase my contacts, then that should equate to more business. And one of the things I saw you write down, which is totally true in my experience, is this idea that if you put 50% more, you can actually get 150% more in results. It's not linear, it's exponential. And then you started to see that happen, right? You quickly rose to the ranks in that particular sales job at IBM. So I guess I'm wondering, that seemed to be going really well. So what prompted you to say like, okay, I want to do something different. Like I want to sell another type of product.
So I had been at another technology company after that for about 3 years doing well. And I realized if I didn't leave at that point, I would probably not leave for a long time because you start to, it just keeps growing. And if you're not, I'd rather be at the bottom of the right ladder than the top of the ladder. I don't want to be climbing, right? And so I realized I was going to be at a desk for the rest of my life, with that. Which is, I didn't see that as the path I wanted to take. And so I took after about 3 years, I took a different outside sales job in technology, to go to pursue a different type of sales.
Okay, cool. So that's interesting to me because I'm aware that in what we do, I mean, you are at a desk. I mean, you see people, right? We're kind of, perhaps we see them virtually now or in person, things of that nature. But I'm aware you get compensated much more handsomely, right?
Correct. Yeah. Because you can, at that time, it was like, you're just sitting at this desk and it was just inside sales. And I was seeing like, oh, well, maybe I really, if I want to grow my skill set, I better learn outside sales too. And so that's why I realized if I just stayed at that job, I would never have any outside sales experience. And so
I understand.
That's why I left.
So that's really interesting where it was more so like getting yourself more well-rounded in sales. So you did the inside sales and now kind of going into outside sales so you can become more well-rounded as a salesperson. And then what was it for you that caused you to say like, okay, now I want to sell something else?
And then my wife, Lindsay, had been in real estate for a couple of years at the time. And I saw her, she was doing well. And I realized like, okay, this looks like, I think this was in 2006-ish, the market doing really well at the time, and realized, okay, well, now again, where do I want to go? And I actually made a pros and cons list of like, okay, if I leave and go to real estate, what's the pros and the cons? And wrote them out and decided, okay, we're going to do this. And so I got my license and I still had my technology sales job. And then I did an open house with her one weekend. She picked up like $1 million buyer, sold him a place. And by that week, I just handed in my resignation to my current company. I'm like, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, you saw what was possible and you're like, hey man, I'm going to apply this skill set over here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's terrific. So, and then I'm wondering, so here you are, this like very kind of seasoned salesperson. You understand both inside sales and outside sales, and you get into a business which we both know, for some reason, people don't perceive to be a sales job. So, what was that like for you? Like when you kind of, planted yourself into this new environment, was it interesting to you that a lot of people didn't understand those kind of core tenets, like, okay, certain amount of contacts a day, certain amount of time on the phone, like that sort of thing?
Yes, it was really interesting. So I gravitated towards, at that time, I had joined Keller Williams, which had the MAPS coaching. And then you and I, where we met originally through Mike Ferry, who was a big, impact on both of our lives, and really gravitated towards exactly what he was saying, which was exactly what I had learned in the previous years, which is that, contacts equals contracts. And that if, there is here's how, you talk about predictable and duplicatable. And look, yes, you can do 4 to 6 open houses a weekend if you wanted to, but is that predictable and duplicatable? And is that the way you want to live your life?
Yeah,
And
100%.
so figuring out a way that there's all these different ways to grow your business. Yes, somebody gets lucky and they do amazing with YouTube and Instagram and all that, but like how predictable and duplicatable is that compared to what really works as the basics? And and the whole system works.
Yeah. So, and that's interesting. So upon hearing kind of that message, like you knew instantaneously that it was true because you had experienced that in the corporate world, and that's corporate sales.
And for whatever reason, I'm trying to, I'm guessing the reason that it was never really taught in real estate, although it probably was at one point, starting in the 70s and 80s, was that it's kind of what people don't want to hear. So if you want to grow your real estate company to 100 people, if you start telling people they have to pick up the phone and they got to do this and that, you're probably not going to recruit too many people, you're telling them what they don't want to hear. But if you tell them, hey, you just got to do these easy things, wow, you're going to get a lot of unproductive agents, but they're going to follow you. So I think that's why people don't realize what it takes, is because nobody's really telling them.
Yeah, I think that's very
Or
true.
what they're telling them will make them a certain amount of income, which then people thinks is a good or the max income you can make.
Correct. So it's a combination of things. It's one, that message, in the Bible, it says we would prefer to be lied to than to be told the truth. And I think that that's very accurate, right? And so that message might not be super palatable because you got to like roll up your sleeves and work and like, put in the time. People say to me regularly, they're like, hey, it must be nice. And I'm like, yeah, well, I've been working 70, 80 hours a week for like, 13 years and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own money and time, energy and effort and kind of self-development and growth and things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, it's earned. It's certainly not given, right?
And you tell people that up front. Now, if you're hungry enough, so like luckily for me, really luckily, is that Lindsay and I, my wife, were in this business together and so we had no other out, right? Like, so that you just, when your back's against the wall enough, prospecting 4 to 6 hours or 8 hours a day doesn't seem like a bad thing compared to not eating.
Yeah.
So maybe people are too comfortable, or they have a way out, or they have, even for their own selves, they're like, you know what, if I make X amount, that's fine. And so they have this exit, they're just okay. There's this complacency. And so you're right. If you don't have, like you said, you've been working 70, 80 hours a week for X amount of years. If you don't have to do that, or feel like you don't have to do that, why would you?
Yeah. Or if you don't have enough reasons. So what people don't know who are listening to this is we're shooting this on a Saturday, and both me and Leigh, prior to doing this, were on the phone, making phone calls. Right.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
it's interesting because people imagine they might see Leigh and be like, oh, like he's just, he probably just chills. Like it all just comes to him. It's like, no, dude, this guy's putting in time and energy and effort. So I guess I'm wondering for you, right? Because again, I share with you, like, I think about you in my head as like a workhorse and somebody who sticks like to the fundamentals. You really don't deviate that much. So for you, in your mind, for those people that are listening, what would you propose are the fundamentals that they should be focused on, and really master them, right? Instead of getting kind of distracted and getting into all these other things that they could be doing, what are the fundamentals?
So I think the fundamentals are, I would probably say two things. Number one, the realtor with the most strong relationships wins. And so, the most, not just the strongest, right? So like you could have just this great group of friends and they're fantastic and they would use you in a second, but there's only like 3 of those people. And so great, that's fantastic. Those are great, strong relationships, but you're only going to do a few deals a year, even if they refer you. So how do you get 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 strong relationships? And so that's where you start talking about picking up the phone and communicating with people and really building those relationships. And these are not, relationships in terms of like being the professional, being the source of information for people. So that's what I would say. It's not just the warm fuzzy, but it's being that professional, and that's the relationship.
That's interesting.
Number one.
So like number one, like obviously we need to have a channel to build those relationships. Me and you, we've chosen the channel of the phone, right? I'm aware that there's other
Yes.
channels, but that's our main mechanism. I tell people regularly, I'm just a really, really well compensated telemarketer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And and that's where, and slash account manager, that like this is, yes, let's talk about, there's Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. And those are like just tools. Those are not how you're going to build relationships, that we're talking about here on a big scale. Again, if your goals are a certain amount, that maybe you can do it that way because, the goals are smaller.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, they're tools, like, one channel might be getting on the phone, another channel might be sending something in the mail, another channel might be leaving something at the door, knocking on the door, another channel might be Instagram, another channel might be Facebook, right? These are all channels
Mm-hmm.
to get kind of connect with people. And then once you
Yes.
kind of earn their business, this idea of fostering meaningful relationships. So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, how do you go about fostering a meaningful relationship with somebody? Because what I share with people regularly is as our game undergoes a change, which it's seismically changing even prior to everything with the virus that was happening, I really do believe that your relationships are like a moat around your castle. And it's
Great point. Yes.
out, because on planet Earth, if you have a castle, somebody's going to want to invade it. It's just the way it is. So the deal is like those relationships are like a moat around your castle. So how do you go about intentionally, purposefully, consciously?
Yeah. Well, I think the second part also plays into it then, which is the second tenet that I think about is trust. Trust. Building that, there's that book called The Speed of Trust, right? And it's like, trust is the grease that moves things along. And so if you can be seen as the trusted resource in any neighborhood, environment, whatever it is, and you have relationships. And so that's the thing, like you might have a bunch of relationships, but if you don't have that trust, and I mean trust, like they know that you're going to get their home sold. They know that you're performing at a high level. They know, that's the trust we're talking about. That's the type of trust you got to build. And so that's where really showing what you do for people and really showing, the results you're getting, that's that trust that we're talking about. So how do you build the strongest and most relationships, and how do you build the most trust?
Yeah, and I would add to that, I think you're absolutely right. And I would also add, because I know you do this for all of your clients, is like being unattached to the outcome. And then also I'm aware that you're truthful. Like you tell people the truth, even if it's not in your personal best interest, right? Like,
and they know, right? Yeah, sorry, yes.
And they know that when they reach out to Leigh, like Leigh's going to tell me what's true, even if he tells me, like he might tell me not to put on the market, but he's going to tell me what's true for me and what's in my best interest, regardless of how it might affect him from a financial perspective.
Those are what are Mike's laws that we always talk about, which is number one, show up. Number two, tell the truth and don't be attached to the outcome. Show up, tell the truth, don't be attached to the outcome. And that's the rules to live by.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, cool. So we got like kind of fundamental of being in the marketplace, right?
Yes.
Kind of looking for people. Once I connect with those people, tell the truth, right? Be unattached to the outcomes, come from a place of contribution and service, right? And then what else would you say is a fundamental?
Well, what you just mentioned about come from a place of contribution and service, that starts within. See, if you coming from a place of lack, if you feel lacking, which is totally normal and natural, like if you're just starting out in real estate, you're gonna come from a place of lack and scarcity because you don't have the knowledge, right, and the confidence. So you just have to build that, and that's where you do the inner work that I know you do so well, which is building your own confidence, and you know that you can perform. You've done it before, and so building that, and then you come from and coming from a place of contribution, and so that's so much more powerful than the commission breath that so many people have. And so because there's a difference between doing and being. Doing, a lot of people are doing. There's a lot of successful billionaires that are doing, but they're being. How are they being? What are they feeling in that moment? Do they feel like they're contributing, or do they feel like they're going to lose it all in a moment, right? Like that being and stepping out of the drama. Like once you realize that every single problem you have just is in the mind, and you can just sidestep that by just dropping your problem, you can just put it down, and you're so much. You can perform at such a higher level, and you can contribute so much more when you step out of the drama. So that you mentioned the contribution, coming from a place of contribution. So we have to touch on that because that is so important.
100%. And then you mentioned something about confidence. It kind of is tied to that. And, I went and looked it up, where the Latin derivative of the word confidence, right? It really means to trust. So what's really interesting about that, it's like, who am I trusting? And who you're trusting yourself. So I know that Leigh trusts himself 1,000% in all selling situations. There's never going to be a situation where he doesn't know what to say or how to say it. And now, because of that, you can be present, right? You don't have to be kind of overly concerned about what to say and how to say it. You can shine your kind of awareness onto the client, onto the individual, make it about them, find out what their goals are.
And the question is, do you think they feel that?
Oh, 1,000%. I know they do. Yeah, 1,000,000%. Right. So the question is how do you end up cultivating that level of trust? So for you, like in yourself, So for you, like what were the kind of strategies, approaches, or techniques that you use to cultivate that level of trust, whether it's role play, whether it's practice, whether it's reading books, like around the
Yeah,
skill of knowing what to say and how to say it and how to communicate?
excellent. So I'm sure there's a whole science behind it, but I've just felt like it's when you perform, you what's that sharpening the axe from Stephen Covey,
Yeah,
right? And so you spend a lot more time practicing and preparing than you do performing. And I would say that would be the number one thing. Because I think I told you early on, like my first few weeks or months in real estate, I locked myself in a room and I was kind of writing out the scripts and listening to the intonations of how people talked for 8 hours a day. And I will tell you, before that, my first role play that I ever did was atrocious, horrible. You know what I mean? Like basically, I think my role play partner stopped me during the role play. That's how bad it was. And so what's the difference between then, right? And now is just practice, listening, preparation, and all of that. And that's how you build the confidence. So, we talk about previewing homes, right? Like, well, what's the quickest way would be go see 1,000 homes in a year. You probably learn a lot that way. You have a lot of confidence, right? So I would put like talking to a major amount of people would be one, but also being in and previewing a ton of homes will give you all of that confidence too.
that's awesome, man. So I wrote down a few things. And as you were saying that, I know from direct experience that's true. Like success leaves clues. So one of the things that I tell people regularly is like, look, man, for like at the beginning, I role play twice a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah,
I wrote out
there you go.
presentations every day. I chanted scripts out loud by myself. I would videotape myself presenting and like audio record myself. Like,
So what do you say to people that say like, but Aaron, I don't have time to do that?
yeah, it's interesting because what I would say to them is that like, that's your tool. So a physician has a stethoscope, a
Yeah,
plumber has, like a wrench.
yeah.
And what we have as salespeople is this and this. So, what the kind of story that I tell myself is like I'm an artist at sales and I use my thoughts, feelings, and emotions, right? And my words and tonality and kind of presence to influence the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of other humans. And that's our
That's great. What's really beautiful about that is that carries on to your personal life too.
Oh, 1,000,000%, right? Because if I can learn how to communicate with, just strangers,
Yeah.
I can definitely learn how to communicate with my
How
wife.
much better is your personal life because of how much better you've become in your business life because of the tools you've sharpened. But
Yeah,
Aaron, we got to show 3 buyers a home this weekend, and I don't have to. I got to do all this admin work. How am I gonna do what you're telling me to do?
yeah. And it's interesting. So when somebody says that to me, what comes up immediately is like, you can't be world class at both. You have to make a decision. And I'm aware that that is a leap of faith because I know on the buy side, a lot of people are attached to that income because it's faster.
Yeah,
But the way I see buyer side income, I see it like working at a restaurant where people who work at a restaurant who are bartenders or whatever, like they make good enough money, but it traps them to where they can never actually like go make more, right?
yeah. The bet,
So,
how I got out of onto the listing side of things and away from the buyer side
go ahead.
was I got sick one weekend and I couldn't take out the buyers.
Oh, wow.
Right when you have to, and so I was like, uh-oh, I have to take myself out of this equation because I can't. I was really sick, and so what did I do? I got somebody else to go take out my clients, and what do you think happened? They wrote an offer without me, with my partner who I put them in touch with. It was perfect. Like, wow. So either I just need to be sick all the time with buyers, like that's great, and just realizing that you can just hand that off, and people are very willing to take that on, and a very good skill set at that.
Yeah, and that like that recognition that you had that the highest and best use of time in this game is listing property in high volume, right? It's the highest
It's a,
leverage activity. It
and it's the best thing for your clients.
and it's the best thing for your clients. Yeah, 100%.
Best use of your time for your own clients is not being in a car for 3 hours showing other people homes.
Yeah. So I guess I'm curious, man. So you get involved in real estate and you drill in on the fundamentals, right? You lock yourself in a room, you're role playing, you're practicing and all that other stuff. Like, what was your trajectory? Like, did you just come out of the gate doing like 100 deals, or was it like a steady kind of 25%, 30% year over year growth, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I would say 10 years ago, okay, that's about when things really started to take off for me. And that was my third year in the business or so. And I, was calling for sale by owners. I was calling expires, was calling our past clients, was doing just listed calls, just sold calls. I was making, I want to say 20 to 30 something contacts a day. And in the 10 years since then, I've 10x'd my income. So I've gone up 10 times since then. Right. And so there was like a year or two where I was doing maybe 30 something deals. And then I went to like 50. And then the next year I went to 80, but my income doubled. So in 1 year, I doubled my income because I started working a little higher end and just things took off. And then the next year it doubled again. So there was 2 years there where I went from like 50 deals to maybe 100 and almost 50 or 130 something.
Now I'm
And
curious because that's explosive kind of growth. And my
yeah,
experience was similar to that, like 17, then 50, then like 80, right? It's just like boom, boom, like these chunks. But I'm wondering because you doubled income twice. And
yeah,
what I'm aware of is, for some people, they don't recognize that that can actually be like a little bit of a challenge, right? Mentally, because you go from like doing this to like this, and you're like, whoa, like, and perhaps maybe
yes.
there's like this self-image thing. It's like, whoa, is this like really me? Like, right? Did you have any of that, or were you just like, yeah, like this is cool?
Really good question. I think I felt like the work that I was putting in the beginning, I was not getting paid as much as I should be for. And so no, once I started to really double, that's when I felt like I was starting to earn near the effort that I was putting in. Before that, I felt like I was putting in more effort than was coming back to me. And
Yeah,
so
it's
then when I
interesting.
don't, yeah,
What comes up for me is this quote, like when a man puts more like time in than what he's paid, then eventually he'll get paid more than what he puts time.
that's it. So if you can, if you can just put a pin in that, right? That would be everything
So
right there. That people should know that the light on at the end of the tunnel is that it gets easier because you get better. And the same thing with walking, right? Like everything was hard whenever you first started to do it, including walking. But eventually you learn. And how hard is it to do it now? It's just part of what you do,
yeah,
walking, driving, whatever. And so, that quote from Zig Ziglar that says, if you will be hard on yourself, life will be easy on you. But if you insist on being easy on yourself, life is going to be very hard
yeah,
on you. And so
very
the
true,
harder
man.
you on yourself, the easier life is.
Yeah, that's very true. And it gets easier because you get better. So don't wish it was easier, just wish you were better.
Mm-hmm. And how do you get better?
Yeah, just putting in the time, putting in the reps,
Mm-hmm.
right? Practicing all that other
And
stuff.
and
So
by the way, it's great for mindset. That's the best part is when you put in the mindset, how great do you feel when you practice, when you role play, when you really study before, like it helps your mindset. You feel better about everything because you're gaining the confidence and you're not, all those negative thoughts aren't there. Because if you leave your mind to its own devices and you're not, what kind of garbage does it come up with?
yeah, 100%. Now, what I'm aware of, because again, like, there's a saying that says a fisherman can notice another fisherman from afar. And when me and you start to talk, bro, it's like, it just like syncs up because like, very, very similar in that way. And I know that what we're describing, because we both experienced it, we both walked that kind of path and that journey. I'm aware that it requires a certain level of obsession, really being like obsessed with this idea and this goal and objective of like mastering a particular skill set or accomplishing, at first it might be like the accomplishment of a carrot that's out there, whether it be like a deal, like a number of deals or like income. But then it becomes about, at least that did for me anyway, and I imagine it did for you. It's just like mastery. It's like, how can I be world class at this particular kind of skill? And I know that that requires, obsession. I'm aware that Tom Brady said one time, he's like, if you want to compete with me, you have to give up your life because that's what I do. So I guess I'm curious, like talk to people a little bit about like what's required.
So yeah, great question. So obviously with Grant Cardone's book, the 10X rule, right? That like what's required is probably about 10 times more than you think it is. That means when what Tom Brady said, giving up your life. And now that's not, again, but that you can still have a life and you can still put things in there that you'd like to do, but you're so committed and obsessed that this becomes your life in a way, an obsession. And so, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel that it gets easier. And the reason that I really wanted to do a lot of business was because it was in the end going to be easier, because you can hire staff, you can really deliver service, you just keep up leveling or leveling up what you're doing and your service you deliver, your skills, it gets easier, but you have to put in the work up front for it to get easier.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember somebody told me one time, they're like, hey, it's easier to do like 150 deals a year than it is to do 50. And I remember at the time I was like, what are you saying? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But then you get there and you're like, yeah, that's true. Like,
is it? So do you tell your clients that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
It really is true. And so anyway, that's what I would, for everybody, that would be something to keep in mind, that like, no, go through the pain now. So what does it take, right? What does it take? I mean, it takes like 7 days a week. It takes putting in time for practice. It takes putting in time for role play. It takes connecting with top agents so that you can learn from what they do. It takes prospecting, hours and hours a day. It takes, listing appointments, right? It takes giving up a lot of things, but the reward is worth it.
Yes, it is.
Because of who you become on the journey, correct?
Yeah, because I mean, like we talked about before, it's like what I get ultimately, because me and you both were very much so motivated by the fruits of our labor, right? And that's not a bad thing. What I'm aware of is what those fruits provide is freedom, right? They provide freedom,
yes,
time, autonomy, like to be able to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, how I want, sort of thing. And who you become, though, like what you get ultimately will never like really make you happy. Who you become will either make you very happy or very sad. So it's like, who am I in the process of becoming?
Right. Can you become the type of person that can put in 8 to 10 hours a day plus and enjoy it?
That's right. And consistently, I share with people like selling, 150, 200, well, let's say 100 homes. Selling 100 homes a year to me is like winning the Super Bowl. So it's like, okay, can you do that? Like people do that once. That's like, okay, he's a good football player. They do it twice, they're in the Hall of Fame. Right? If you could do it consistently, like year after year after year after
exactly
year,
right.
That's sustained excellence.
So how important do you feel like it is attaching a larger or bigger meaning to what you do?
Oh man, we were talking about this the other day, man. Like, I think it's enormous. I find it very interesting that people ask me because they see like let's say our work ethic, and they see me on a Saturday, even though taking, whatever, 3, 4, 5 listings in a week and have 10 pendings in a week. And we're making phone calls. They're like, I don't understand that. Like, where is that coming from? And, I think people are super capable. They just don't have enough reasons, or the reasons aren't strong enough.
Yes.
What it's become for me, I don't know if it's true for you, is it's become like what me fulfilling my potential can do for other people.
Yeah. So have you heard that quote? Who was it? Keith Cunningham, that says, hell on earth is meeting the person you could have been.
Yeah. That's totally true, man. So then what it becomes, which is kind of fun, is like, and this is cool because it'll lead me to my last question, is like, what am I actually capable of? Like, it becomes a game, like, oh, this is interesting. Like, what could I do? And I don't know about you, but I feel personally, it took me 14 years or whatever to get to a place where I'm like, I can actually do something now. I have been prepared to actually be able to do something like, big, right? So I guess for you, like Leigh, you're crushing it, right? One of the top, if not the top agents in your marketplace, and selling, hundreds of homes on a regular basis. Respected in your game, right? Is one of the best to do this. So like, what does it look like for you moving forward? Like what is your?
Yeah. So the vision is continuing to be, the meaning that we attach to it is continuing to get better. How good could you be? Right. That type of thing. But also like continuing to improve our processes to the point where we always are just providing the best possible service to everybody. You know what I mean? So improving our processes, improving our service, just continuing to get better and better at what you do and what we do and deliver would be, and empowering others, to do more of what we do. Like, it's no fun if you don't take anybody along with you on the ride. And so now, we have some really, really great agents that on our team that we work with, and really amazing assistants and admin and partners that are just, the strongest we've ever had. And we're providing this insane life for them because of what we're trying, what we're trying to achieve for everybody. And so just helping people along the way, helping your clients, but helping people like agents and your staff.
Yeah, that's
That's the
awesome.
bigger
So
meaning for
can you
me.
see yourself at some point, perhaps, because I'm aware that there's this normal natural trajectory. So you build something up, it becomes this huge monster machine, and it requires lots of time and energy and effort. And then at some point, you might say, well, I don't know if I'm kind of interested in continuing to push that, kind of the 70 to 80 hours a week. So could you foresee kind of moving forward, perhaps like empowering or equipping, agents around you to perhaps step in and then lead, maybe don't.
100%, absolutely. And thankfully, my wife Lindsay is our office. She runs our staff, HR, recruiting, everything like that. And so she is the engine behind how we're growing our culture and being able to empower other people to do what we do. So yes, I can see that as the goal to continue to grow, but not just by me putting in 90 hours a week.
Yeah, and that'll be awesome. So like that'll be like this evolution, and then it'll be on to the next adventure. And the
Yeah,
question
and
is,
and we're there. We're doing a lot of that right now. Like it's, I think I work a very good week now as opposed to what I did, in the beginning.
yeah, that's awesome, man. Good for you, brother, for kind of reclaiming that time. So, listen, man, I appreciate you so much. I know that people are going to get a tremendous amount of value by listening to this. So, if people want to find you, if they want to send you referral, like where can they find you?
LeighMarcus.com. Yeah, that's I'm in Chicago. Google me, and would love the opportunity to help anybody.
Yeah, for sure. He's the man. You're definitely in great hands with Leigh. So I appreciate you, brother. Thanks so much.
Thanks again, Aaron.
Yep.